What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Savvy, and welcome back to the Savvy Show. And in today's episode, we have an SCP that I figured that I already covered already, but it's a different digit. But I'm not too sure. You guys can let me know in the comment section below. But I feel like this SCP is the SCP-000, the lost SCP. That reaction I have on the channel. However, it's not 000. This is SCP-3930, the Pattern Screamer. So basically that whole SCP was pretty much a pattern screamer too. So I don't know if it's just like a different variation and it's its own SCP in its own right, but even the title says this SCP does not exist, and the last one was a lost SCP. So I'm kind of confused about that, so that's why I'm definitely diving deep today to kind of find out what's going on here. But yeah, if you guys are excited for this reaction and you guys enjoy along the way, please remember to smash that like button for me, and also remember to smash the sub button, join the family if you're not already part of it. All gas, no breaks, we don't slow down for nothing. Let's get it together. And also remember to smash that bell so you can stay plugged for each and every upload. And without any further ado, let's get this show started. Alrighty, this SCP does not exist. SCP-3930, the Pattern Screamer. Let's go.
SCP-3930 does not exist. Thanks for watching. Now check out SCP. The following information is only known to 7 living people. Even those actively guarding this anomaly will never know this information. Every single person who believes they are aware of the existence of SCP-3930 has the potential to increase its danger. SCP-3930 has been given the risk class Critical, the highest possible risk class for an anomaly, meaning that individuals nearby will invariably be exposed to acute, life-threatening harm, and that these effects cannot be mitigated.
They usually don't talk about risk classes, it's usually just the containment classes. So it's kind of cool that they're doing it for this SCP.
You learn about SCP-3930 at your own risk, with the knowledge that this awareness puts your life at hazard. Someday soon, you may be forced to make the ultimate sacrifice for the good of all life and matter in the universe.
What the heck?
That is why it is imperative that you know one essential thing. SCP-3930 does not exist. Now with that out of the way, we have only one question for you. Can you hear the screaming? It was when Dr. Vasiliev heard the screaming that he and his ragtag team of scientists knew it was already over. The year was 1971, and Dr. Vasiliev's team was stationed at a highly secretive Soviet research outpost near what would later be established as the Russian town of Usinsk within the Komi Republic. As far as Dr. Vasiliev was concerned, they were dead men already. Well, that's not entirely accurate. To be dead is to be something. And the men that had once been stationed with them but were here no longer could not be considered something at all. Their brush with the immensely powerful and classified anomaly later known as SCP-3930 had robbed them of their very existence. Now Dr. Vasiliev knew that he and the few remaining men stationed at the base with him would be next.
So they just wiped him out of existence. Okay.
The Soviet government had dispatched a detachment consisting of around 100 soldiers and scientists to investigate the anomaly in the Komi Republic. As far as they could tell, it appeared to occupy a 1-kilometer square area within a forest, but to say that it really occupied anything would be a stretch. And out of the over 100 men who had been dispatched, now scarcely 30 remained.
Jesus.
Observation teams had been sent into the anomalous zone to collect data on what exactly they were dealing with. But each time, it seemed as though the researchers were doomed to know less and less about what they were investigating. From a distance, the area didn't even appear to be anomalous. It looked simply like a continuation of the forest, complete with the expected flora, fauna, and even some distant evidence of human habitation, like an abandoned building. But without fail, nobody who had ever seen the building up close had ever returned. Thanks to SCP-3930, they had simply ceased to be, because simply put, when you introduce something into nothing, then nothing wins.
This is so confusing. Well, like, I always figured it would be like something like mimetic, and it's not really like a certain entity. It's just like probably like a void where it like resides, and that's where, you know, people just get lost in the sauce and they're just gone completely. Kind of like a glitch in the Matrix. However, if this is really nothing, then this should be really nothing, though. That's the confusing part. But oh well.
Dr. Vasiliev had seen too many good men disappear into oblivion, and soon it would be his turn, too. But first, something horrible would crawl out of the zone. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that didn't exist. Something that will never exist. And yet, here it was. In science, the observer effect is a dreaded phenomenon. All experiments involve the observation of phenomena to collect data and then prove or disprove a hypothesis. But the observer effect describes the frustrating scenario where the mere act of observing a phenomenon alters it, reducing the usefulness of the data. A common example of this in mundane life is checking the pressure of your car or bike's tires. To do this, you need to let out some air, thus changing the pressure. But pressure holds a very different meaning when you're working with what might be the universe's largest patch of nothing. Because of their prime directive, namely researching the anomaly, Dr. Vasiliev and his fellow scientists were effectively forced to observe SCP-3930, and 3930 apparently doesn't like that. The scientists only noticed sounds at first.
But how can you observe nothing, though? That's how would you even know where it's at? It'll be different if, like, you don't know where it's at, and then people just randomly get lost because, like, it's obviously nothing. So how can you observe nothing? Okay.
Barely perceptible little screeches that could easily be written off as your mind playing a trick on you. And, in a sense, it is. But around SCP-3930, the tricks played by the mind become a lot more practical than anywhere else. What started as sounds soon came to take on a visual form, as more people became aware of the anomaly and made futile attempts to observe it from the outside.
So first they heard the sounds, and then after hearing the sounds, then they started seeing the visual representation of this SCP. Then that is something. Then that's not nothing. I'm just being straight up.
These scattered visual and audio forms soon became nicknamed Screamers, for their horrific, hateful wailing. Dr. Vasiliev and his team believed that despite the extremely hostile nature of the anomalies, they had no way of ever leaving the anomalous zone. That belief was soon proved wrong, and not long after, only 10 researchers remained. It seemed that the last of Dr. Vasiliev's hope died with the lost men, but there was some good news at least. With only 10 left to observe the SCP-3930 anomaly, the Screamers began to disappear and the anomalous zone became stable once more. 10, it seemed, was the upper limit of observers that could distantly engage with SCP-3930 before all hell broke loose. And then the SCP Foundation arrived. By the time they reached the long-since defunct research outpost, Dr. Vasiliev was the only one left. The final members of his team had sacrificed themselves by walking into the void and joining non-existence.
So the void is that building pretty much? Why would they just sacrifice themselves? What was the point of that? The limit was 10. Weren't you guys the 10? Hold on, let me hear this again. I'm getting pretty confused.
Vasiliev was the only one left. The final members of his team had sacrificed themselves by walking into the void and joining non-existence.
What was the point?
Vasiliev himself remained for only one purpose: to tell the Foundation what he knew, what they needed to know.
Wait, why would you want to die? So that was his one purpose, and then I'm assuming after he does that, he's just going to sacrifice himself? So you just don't care about living anymore? Like, what is going on in this SCP? Bro, this is kind of weird. If they're getting drawn to it, that would be one thing, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. It seems like they're willingly, like, they sacrificed themselves to other 9 individuals, and the only one that stayed alive had one mission to tell the SCP this situation. No, this is kind of goofy.
Before bowing out into SCP-3930 himself, along with however many of the Foundation personnel needed to go to keep the number of active observers at a nice, clean 10. That is the burden of knowing. And accepting that burden is to accept that you may one day need to become unknown in order to protect your fellow human beings from the horrors that lay within.
Oh, okay. So just because they know about this SCP, they have an urge to sacrifice themselves for humankind. Is that what I'm gathering here? I mean, that would make better sense than just willy-nilly sacrificing yourself, but still, just because you know? I wonder if it's like that strong just to sacrifice yourself, or like you really feel like you need to do this to uphold the secrets. Because if that was the case, why would you tell the SCP Foundation this? Because that would just be more people that would know about this, and then they'll have to sacrifice themselves, and in turn, you're not saving humankind because more humans are dying. It would be different if you're dying with the secret. Wouldn't that make more sense? I don't know. That's just my interpretation, but we're not even halfway done yet.
But what is SCP-3930, and what are these so-called screamers that lurk within? We have the answers to these questions. The only question for you is whether you're ready to take on the grave responsibility of knowing too.
I won't sacrifice myself.
SCP-3930
Tell you that much.
does not exist. That isn't just a cover-up by the O5 Council. It doesn't not exist in the official capacity. It is, quite literally, the world's largest patch of nothingness, and anything that enters it is doomed to become nothing as well.
So it's a black
hole.
hole.
It is a difficult concept to grasp because fundamentally, all language was built as a tool to communicate concepts that, on some level, exist. And SCP-3930 does not qualify.
Maybe that's why I'm so
Close
confused.
your eyes for a moment. Seriously, do it. And try to imagine nothing. What do you see? An infinite space of pure darkness?
Yeah.
A white void stretching on into infinity? We're sorry to inform you that neither of these counts as being truly nothing. Though darkness may be the absence of light, to see that blackness is to still see something. The darkness even implies the existence of light. The same can be said for the white void. For such a thing to exist, we need both the concepts of the color white and the idea of a void. These are perhaps the lowest bars for existence imaginable, but SCP-3930 doesn't meet them. It is well and truly nothing. Nothing at all. And because it is nothing, its containment procedures are largely just a matter of information control. If nobody knows about it, the threat is contained. If ever someone just happened to wander in, they would stop existing, so the problem would take care of itself, as callous as that sounds. On its own, the anomaly would technically be harmless, but when mixed with humans, things become a whole lot more complicated.
So is that building the SCP? Like, they keep on showing it around where the humans are disappearing. Like, I don't understand. Or is the void within this building, like inside the building, that is like the void of nothingness? Like,
you see, unless you have the misfortune to run into SCP-3930, you will spend your life without ever having to encounter true nothingness. Even when you die, the matter that comprises your body and the energy that comprises your consciousness will remain. They will just be transferred into other forms.
How would you know?
Humans have no reason to ever encounter nothingness, and thus we have no physiological or psychological equipment to truly observe and comprehend nothingness. When we're given a true blank, our instinct is to fill it. And that right there is the true danger of SCP-3930, and the very reason we have to deal with screamers. Or, as you may know them, pattern screamers. That's right. If this whole setup seemed awfully familiar to you, it's because SCP-3930 is the absolute global epicenter of pattern screamers, the hateful entities we've encountered before in anomalies like SCP-000.
okay, that's what I'm... Okay, yeah. They should have said that in the beginning. That's something that I had to remember, because I vaguely remember that SCP-000, but I knew it had something to do with pattern screamers. And... now it's making sense. Let me rewind that.
Because SCP-3930 is the absolute global epicenter of pattern screamers, the hateful entities we've encountered before in anomalies like SCP-000.
Yep, okay.
Nothingness is the natural environment of pattern screamers. But because SCP-3930 is the only place where true nothingness exists on our layer of reality, it's also the only place where pattern screamers are able to directly interact with humans if they become powerful and defined enough, often to deadly and terrifying results. Pattern screamers are an incredibly difficult concept to wrap your head around sometimes, but allow us to explain. Close your eyes again, and this time, picture a clown. Not a specific clown like Ronald McDonald or Pennywise. You have to make up your own clown.
Okay.
Let's say he's got green hair, a big blue rubber nose, a wide smile, and polka dot clown shoes. The other details are up to you. go as simple or as
Something that I
complicated
figured.
as you like, as long as it's an entirely new clown you've never seen in real life. Now hold the image in your head. Really focus on it. You can even use your imagination to make him dance or walk around. Fundamentally, this clown does not exist. Aside from being the product of chemical and electrical processes in your brain, if this is indeed an entirely new clown in your mind, it exists only on the level of thought. Now imagine if this clown in your mind was somehow aware of the fact it wasn't real, and that it was only the product of your imagination. Imagine that this clown is infuriated by that fact. It despises you for bringing it into being, doomed to be a concept straddling existence and non-existence. Imagine this clown wants to hurt you. It really, 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 really wants to hurt you with every fiber of its non-existent being. That right there is a pattern screamer. And the frightening thing about SCP-3930 is that if enough people observe it directly, these pattern screamers can become real. They can crawl out of nothing, and then they can show you exactly how they feel about you bringing them into existence. And when they're done, you'll probably regret ever existing in the first place.
Bro, that was a good analogy about a pattern screamer. I think that's the best one so far that I heard. Wow.
Think of them as hostile, sentient hallucinations capable of reaching maximum power around SCP-3930. This is because when humans are given a lack of stimulus, their minds simply create their own. This is why people believe they see the forest simply continuing into the anomalous zone. It's the only way the mind can comprehend what's going on here. It's like the phenomenon of pareidolia. Humans have a natural tendency to see patterns in things, even if they were never really there. It's from these very patterns that the pattern screamers gain both their form and their name. They're monsters that we create, cursed to live hellish half-existences, and they hate us for it.
Okay, so that was SCP-000. I remember someone created, So I remember someone created a pattern screamer, and that's when they were talking about what it is and everything. So this is pretty much mainly about the nothingness, where the pattern screamers resides, more so the pattern screamer itself, which was SCP-000, that I remember.
Dr. Vasiliev described SCP-3930 as a kind of hateful mirror that reflects back the ugliest shards of our own minds, first broken in the futile quest to comprehend the true nature of nothingness. Thousands have likely been lost inside SCP-3930, if we can even call them lost.
For real.
As lost implies that something is still out there.
Yeah, they're gone completely.
Even if we never actually find it. This cannot be said for the victims of SCP-3930. They are nowhere and nothing. They can't be found again, because there is nothing to find. The Foundation has used D-Class personnel to perform manned recon missions into SCP-3930. Wow. Feeding information back to the few members of Mission Control permitted to be aware of SCP-3930's
How they're just smiling about this
without immediate termination. The D-Classes have ventured well into the heart of nothingness, even reaching and entering the building that can be seen in the distance. There they found messes of haunting inconsistencies. The place looks like it's been abandoned for decades, but also has evidence of recent habitation. Doors and windows move. Curtains and hallways go on forever. They feel a sound in their ears that's similar to the screech of TV static. No, not a screech. Really more
screamers.
of a scream. It's always in that moment that the realization hits them. They don't exist. Not anymore. And they haven't for a little while now.
Oh, wow.
They're just a few scattered memories of the Foundation researcher talking to them, reflected back by SCP-3930's hateful mirror.
Yo.
Moments later, they're gone.
That's crazy.
It's like they were never here at all. So if ever anyone asks you, what is SCP-3930? You know there's only ever one answer.
Does not exist.
SCP-3930 does not exist. Now check out the Lost
Damn.
SCP.
Yep, I figured that. And that's a good one to check out right after. Because I wish I checked out this one before the Pattern Screamers, because this is mainly about like the house of where the Pattern Screamers resides compared to just talking about the people that occupy the house and not really the house itself. Hope that made sense. If it didn't, oh well then. But yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this SCP reaction. If you guys did, please remember to smash that like button. Also smash the sub button if you're not already part of the family. And remember, hit that bell so you can stay plugged for each and every upload. And also, let me know in the comment section below what you thought about this SCP and the pattern screamers. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. So with that all out the way, unfortunately, that concludes today's episode. However, I'll catch you guys on the next one.